Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. I am your host, Lucas McCann. With me today, Norma Castrejon, a senior technology consultant with DelCor. Welcome, Norma.
Hi, thank you for having me. So happy to be here.
Our pleasure. Well, why don't I turn the microphone, as it were, over to you, Norma. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, your current role with DelCor, and also I'd love to hear how you found our crazy world of associations.
Sure. So I'm currently a senior technology consultant at DelCor. And so essentially what my role at the company is to do consulting with my clients when it comes to any project management implementation, any selection projects. For example, if an organization is looking for an association management system or a learning management system, content management system, all kinds of different selections. I've even had bespoke applications or a travel and expense management system. We have a tried and true process that we follow that has really helped our clients be able to select that right fit for them. And we are vendor agnostic, which I think helps us in that matter too. We don't prefer one vendor over another. And then we also do assessments as well for your systems to make sure that whether they're a good fit or if we think that it's better to change to look at different options to help meet the needs of your current needs, but also those future strategic goals that you may have. DelCor in general also has managed service providers, and then they also have virtual CIO services and IT maturity model assessments that we do.
DelCor is specific to associations, correct? Are you 100% focused as an organization within the association marketplace?
We only work with 501c organizations, so it's actually nonprofits and associations. But we have been in business for over 35 years, with our founder, Loretta DeLuca, and then Dave Creel, a little bit after that, who joined her.
Yeah.
And so, it's really just association. So 501c is what we say, so it's C3s, C6s that we focus on. And so all our consultants have worked at associations or nonprofits as they come in and work with clients. So we really understand the makeup of the organizations, what their needs might be. We've worked in associations ourselves or in nonprofits. And so we understand the culture, decision-making, and sometimes how you need board approval for certain decisions and whatnot when it comes to that.
Yeah, in our little space of hundreds of thousands of national organizations, if you will, but in our little space, I think it goes a long way. Just simply speaks to the credibility, right? When you're in the association space, don't you kind of seek out people who have the credentials, can walk the walk and talk the talk, and have the Rolodex to back it up?
Yeah, I mean, before I started, I knew of DelCor since I started in associations, actually, which has now been a little over 12 years ago that I started working in associations. And I learned about DelCor right away because I've always had a position in the technology field, right? Whether it was in, project management or associate director, assistant director. I had several positions within technology at several different associations. And so I knew of DelCor back then, and I always felt that they were a very reputable company. So when I had the opportunity to work with them, I'm like, oh, can I learn? I think I was thinking, can I learn from my boss who's very smart and I considered him a mentor and I could learn a lot from, or can I learn from a whole team of very smart and intelligent strategic people? And so when I had the opportunity, I decided to join them. And I found that the team really enjoys working at DelCor. We help each other out. We're there for each other. So that's another thing I tell our clients. If I don't have the answer, I have a whole team of people that I can ask about it, to try and get the right answer for you.
So associations aren't just hiring Norma, so to speak. They're hiring an entire team and backing with decades of experience.
Yeah. Yes.
That's amazing. So what have you learned, if you don't mind me asking, what have you learned from that team environment sort of along the way in your journey with DelCor and technology?
That every client is a little different, but there are some aspects that are the same, right? And I've learned, we're assigned one, sometimes we're assigned one consultant per client. And so adjusting to being that outside consultant, but also providing your expertise is really great, right? Because I think it's a big responsibility that organizations give you, and I've learned to make sure that whatever answers I'm giving are the best answers. And so I will lean on my colleagues to get answers to questions as much as possible, and everyone is always willing to help. It's always, and you manage multiple clients, and I don't know, I've enjoyed it, right? Because I think what's happened at other organizations is that when I've worked with them, is like I get to a point where I've done the new, and it's like, well, how much more am I going to learn, right? But when you're a consultant, you're constantly like changing clients. Sometimes there's clients that you stay with a long time, and there's other clients that you finish the project, so you get assigned another client. And so you're constantly learning something different about what an organization or an association does, right? And that knowledge you just build on for your next client.
Yeah, and we jokingly talked about the first time that we had a discussion sort of pre-show that you're essentially selling yourself out of a job if you do it right? Like you get somebody onto a new AMS platform, there shouldn't be a lot of a need, the next year or even 3 or 5 years down the track, you've got them into a position. And so there is sort of a constant need to take the credibility and references and do it again, right?
Yeah, but I think if we do it well, then references go a long way, right? And they say, like, they're very thorough. I've had clients that are like, oh, you did a great job. We really, really believe in your process. We know how detailed you were. And so then when they have a need for another type of selection, then they're like, we want DelCor to help us with that selection, because they were so thorough and believed so much in our process when we did it, that then when they have another need, then they'll do it. And then I think there'll be references for anyone else who may be looking, to do it. Because I think one thing that we say, as an example, for an AMS selection project, like how often can an organization actually do one, right? Maybe every 7 to 10 years, you may look at it and then say, yes, we may need to change. Hopefully not less than that. Hopefully not less than 5 years, right? And so how often do you, as a person that works at an association, has to do a selection of an AMS? Whereas we do multiple AMS selections a year, right? So our expertise, we're bringing in a lot more knowledge than, not saying that someone can't do it themselves, but we do several of them a year. And so that brings in a different kind of expertise for them.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot, in that the association staff, they wear a lot of hats. And AMS selection, the chances that you have somebody on staff who's an absolute expert in AMS selection, well, one, they probably learned that from making a lot of mistakes, I would imagine, or unless they, got into their role after being in technology. But the likelihood of that is just, it's small, right? And so this is an area where let's not be too arrogant. Let's ask the experts and do it right, because there's a lot at stake. And I've seen it gone really wrong, and it can be quite expensive if you do it wrong.
Yeah, because then you'll start a full implementation and then find out that there is a high need or a high priority item, requirement that they may not be able to do, and now you have to figure out how to make it fit.
Yeah. Well, let's help our audience sort of benchmark. And you said selection process and onboarding, and I get there's some that may be more simple and some much more complex. I'd be curious, one, what's a typical, if that's even a thing? And you can say, Lucas, you're out to lunch. There's no such thing as a typical AMS selection. The range is large, but what should, if I was doing one, what would be an expectation you would set in terms of timeline for a selection process and then an implementation?
Average, I would say about 4 to 5 months for a selection. And then from there, after the selection, maybe 9 to 12 months. And if it gets more complicated, then it's more complicated, but it's that, that minimal, maybe you get to the point where you need to get a minimal viable product that you need to have up and running. And then you add some of these second set of big features. But the thinking is that once you go live, it's making sure that your leadership understands that it's not like, oh, I'm live and now we're done. right? You constantly have to invest in the system, right? You have to make sure you have a budget item to be able to have dollars to continuously invest in the system, especially when it's new. There's things you could test all you want. You're not going to test everything that every one of your users is going to do. And so they may find out something that you really think that the majority of your users will benefit from. So it's, making sure that you're consistently evaluating and investing in your tool afterwards to make sure that it continues to meet your needs. That's
a really important point is, perfection in that process and that rollout can just be an absolute killer. And nobody gets it 100% right. I mean, Apple sends out updates pretty regularly, right? I mean, certainly it's a living, breathing base of code and technology that is constantly being implemented, integrated with. And so it is a living, breathing thing. It's like when an association or any organization says, well, I'm done with my website. I'm just going to wipe my hands clean of that. We'll talk about website again in another 5 years. So silly.
No. Yeah. You have to have that in your mind. Your leadership needs to know that they have to continuously invest in their technology. Otherwise, if you don't end up doing that for more than 5 years, look at how much technology has changed in the last 5 years just on its own, right? And so
5 months,
I think right? Like the year of AI, just in itself, right? So it's just something that I think every organization should have their leadership understand.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be slowing down. The curvature of the advancement in technology is kind of spiking, and everything that gets layered in just accelerates that even further. It's kind of mind-blowing, some of the stuff that you have to keep up with, or try to keep up with, I should say, because nobody can really keep up. It's just...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good luck. I mean, that's that, and then maybe marketing would be behind it in the most changing sort of piece of running the association. And only because they're very closely tied together, wouldn't you say, like marketing and technology? I mean, not one and the same necessarily, but you can't really do one without the other, or think about one without the other.
Yeah. I always had to work with my marketing team, right? And it's like, as when you're in technology and marketing, like your customers are both internal and external people, right? It's not you're serving your internal staff, but you're also making sure that the tool or whatever is being utilized is also great for those external to the organization.
Yeah. So I didn't ask you this question beforehand, so I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but I think you're okay with that, Norma. When you go through the selection process and the implementation process, who is the one either person or department that people who try to do that on their own forget to consider and can be just the death of the whole project?
I don't know that we have like one, that you forget to consider, right?
Well, I guess in that context, I'll speak and give you some time to think about what. So I've seen several of these who are like, we implemented it, but we didn't think about how business development was using it, or we didn't think about how our meeting people were using it, or we didn't think about how our accountants were using the system, right? And it just kind of seemingly pulls the whole thing to a grinding halt if you don't, talk to every department, it seems.
Well, I think that's where you probably have hit it. It's like they may talk to one person, or they might just assume some requirements, whoever is taking that lead, right, on for accounting or for meetings or for membership, right? But they may not have that dedicated time of talking to the whole team, right? Maybe they consult with one person, and maybe it's that leader in that department instead of the people who are actually doing the day-to-day work, right? Sometimes it's the smaller things like, you have chapters, but you don't utilize it as much as you should. But maybe this new tool can help you do some things in chapters that you hadn't thought of before, right? Or advocacy. We try to hit every single functional area that exists.
Right. I always think about it as, this dinner metaphor that everybody is going to have to eat the same meal, right? And if you don't ask everybody, and then you later find out that one person's allergic to peanuts, and you've chosen peanut butter and jelly, like, it's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to eat.
Or awards, right? Like maybe awards is managed completely outside, and you're like, well, do you want to think about maybe there's a system out there that may help you manage some awards, or at least keep track of who won an award, who got nominated, who, you know what I mean? Some of these things, there are smaller aspects that you may not think about. But with our process, we at least ask if it's not already identified, we'll ask about it and maybe have some requirements gathered around that.
It would be nice to think that folks in different departments are flexible enough that people are open to looking at new solutions within their department. But I'm going to venture to guess that the resistance to change, becomes a much higher barrier than people are anticipating. It's just,
I think in some cases, that may be the case.
Yeah. Taking it back, did you find technology first, or did you find associations first? What came before the other?
Yeah. So technology has always been my life, I think. I studied engineering, so I started off as a software engineering corporate. And then I moved over to, quality assurance, software quality assurance, and then eventually moved into project management, but within the IT world, right? So internally in the IT department, I became a project manager. And so I was in engineering for products, and then essentially moved into IT, but the project management aspect of things. So typically when people, are in IT and move into leadership, they started off as like an IT support person, right? And then go into like a systems admin or network admin, and then eventually manage an IT department, where I came in as a PM. But because of my engineering background, I think I have I love problem solving, and I love to dig deep when there's an issue, right? So I always say, like, my IT kind of hat, you have an IT hat, I'm not going to be your networking expert, right? Like that, because I can manage and I can help you out with IT support, like basic stuff, right? I can do that. Why is my printer not working? Excel, I've done that, right? As part of those initial roles that I had in associations, within the associations I worked with. But my bread and butter was always like systems, right? Your AMS, your managing of projects, making sure that testing was done, that we documented testing, that we made sure that we prioritized any issues that were outstanding, asking the right questions, coming up with solutions, coming up with requirements. And that's always kind of been, I would say, my strength. And so I was in ITPM in corporate, then I didn't want to stay in corporate. So I ended up moving over to nonprofits and finding my first job in associations that way, as a project manager in the IT department.
Did you seek out associations, or did you kind of just stumble in like everybody else?
Yeah, you stumble in like everybody else, right? You stumble in because all I did, I think because I wanted to work in nonprofits, I was looking specifically at a nonprofit career site. So it was just for nonprofits that posted jobs, and they happened to have posted that job there. I didn't know about Association Forum or ASA. I'm based in Chicago, which is why I'm a member of Association Forum.
Yeah, great group.
Or ASAE, right? To be able to look at those career sites. I was lucky that when I started in associations, my boss was very involved with the forum and with ASAE, and kind of brought me along and helped me to learn about those organizations.
Yeah. Is there one thing in the association industry or in your current role at DelCor that you really look forward to every year?
Every year? You mean like a annual meeting?
Yeah. Is there any type of thing that happens in our industry annually or regularly that?
I just like the community. I love the association community. So it's not even like a yearly thing. It's an ongoing thing to me, right? I've met a lot of people that I have become really very good friends of mine, and they weren't people that I essentially worked with at an association, but I built those relationships because of Association Forum, because of ASAE, and I also was a DelCor scholar. They have this diversity executive leadership program that I was selected to in 2015, which then kind of opened up that network as well and helped me to meet more people within the industry. So it's just getting together and being able to learn from each other and build that community that I just really like. I like the culture of associations, I guess. And once I came here, and then I'm like, oh, everyone's really nice here. I think I fit in like culturally. And I just made that decision that I wasn't going to go back to corporate, like working with corporate, right? Like if I was going to go over to the consulting side, it was going to be very strategic, and it was still working with, associations and nonprofits.
Yeah. So you've enjoyed associations and mission-driven stuff so much that you got involved in Association Latinos, which is a growing, new, budding organization. Tell me about your role there and what's going on.
So we started in 2020. We started the community in 2020, and that was because it was Hispanic Heritage Month. I was trying to figure out what else can I do at the forum. I volunteered in all types of capacities. I had a conversation with Michelle Mason, who was the CEO at the time there, and just talked about, I mentioned to her that there weren't a lot of Latinos that I could look to for growth and for speaking with, to speak with, to learn from. I did know some, not a lot. And so she, it was Hispanic Heritage Month, and they had recently done a study with McKinley Advisors on DEI and what organizations are looking for and what employers are looking for. And so she gave me an opportunity to do a conversation circle, which is a webinar. And she said, can you do this? Can you find people to do this with you? And so, I found 4 other people that I knew. We came together. We put this webinar together, and I think there was so much energy from us doing this, and we found that there was a need for it. And then from that, this LinkedIn community was created for Association Latinos. And we just decided to start doing webinars, to start highlighting people. We created a mission and vision for ourselves. And then last August, we became an official nonprofit. So we've been an official nonprofit for about a year. But like what we've done this past year, I think says a lot about our growth, right? So we became a nonprofit last August. And so then because of that, and our mission is to elevate those voices of Latinos within associations, and also try to bring more Latinos into the association space. But like our mission, so then we did a call for volunteers, and we had 20, for 4 different committees, and we had like over 20 people sign up to be volunteers.
Wow. Because
we were at a point where, we've been working full time and doing this on the side because we're very passionate about it, right? And so, but in order for us to grow, we understand that we need more bodies and more people to help us get to that, continue to grow that mission. And so we have 20 volunteers for 4 committees. Wow. We started off an awards program. And so this next Thursday on October 12th, we're going to be giving out our first awards for 2 award recipients, which is Michael Pereira, who got the Inspira Award, and Juan Amador, who got the Estrella Award. And so it just makes us feel good that, our vision is to, like, in 20 years, be able to come back and reflect, like, that we, this was the first year that we started this. We've been putting together some really good branding for our communications. We have a great volunteer who does that, Ana Maria. Her name's Ana Maria, and that's her business, and she decided to give us her time to help us do that, because that's kind of one of the things when you're growing, right? You're like, okay, we want to do all these things, but we also need financial resources to do them, right? We recently got approval to be CAE registered providers. So we're providing our first CAE sessions during Hispanic Heritage Month this month, and that's for Latina Equal Pay Day. And we have one on October 5th and October 10th. So those are 2 webinars that will each give you 1 CAE credit, which I think is also a huge milestone for us. And I'm very proud of everything that we've done. Not only the first 2 years when it was just 5 of us, but like this year, now that there's 20 volunteers and everything that we've started to establish. Like we started sending out a regular newsletter that we wanted to do, but we wanted to do that in the past. We just didn't have the time, and we've had regular webinars that we put out from our professional development team, and we're having our first, what I call like our first standalone event in person that is happening as part of our award celebration. And so every committee has done such a great, has had such great accomplishments that it's really something to be proud of, I think.
I think so too. I mean, a 20-year vision, I think that's amazing. I think you all are going to meet or exceed your goal of 20 years. I think it's going to be amazing what you all have done in 5 years, in 5 years time. And it's just the growth. I can hear the passion in your voice, and that's what it takes, right? I mean, associations are mission-driven organizations that impact industries or people or the world. And you all are on just a fabulous path. And I've gotten, as you know, to talk to some other members of Association Latinos, and it was a shared passion. And I also, in talking to you, recognize you're essentially starting something from scratch. It's very entrepreneurial what you are doing. And there's people out there that I'm sure really resonate with. I'm passionate about this. I have a mission for this. This is part of my culture or my being. What could you share with them? Because it has to start with passion. What are some things that you did in this, I would say, very short period of time? I think, again, the idea that you all started a couple of years ago and you're already doing awards, that's amazing. What are some of the things now, even looking back in the short term, that you will can point to and say, we did that and that had a great impact on where we are today?
Well, I think that if you have a good group of people that you work with, right, I think is key, right? There was 5 of us, and we all, like, our energy and our way of working together was just spot on, right? We have a lot of respect for each other and for what everyone has to offer. And when we get into a meeting, right, and there's a decision point of whether we need to decide to move forward on a certain strategic decision or a question that comes up, we are very good about hearing each other out and coming to consensus on what needs to happen, right? And I think that's important when you're starting out. When you're starting out and trying to move forward with things, it is so important to make sure that you have buy-in from everyone, or that if someone doesn't agree, they understand why we're moving forward in a certain direction. We've become very good friends because of it, right? Definitely our friendships has grown tremendously the last couple of years because of it. And I don't know, that passion has to be there, and finding those people with you, because there are times where you get like, okay, are we doing the right thing? You start kind of thinking to yourself, like, can we keep growing? Can we keep doing this? And then you have that, you have them as someone to lean on and hear you through and say, and confirm that what you're doing is right. And you are going to the right path. And to also hear those allies around us, right? And the people who see what we're doing and say that what you're doing is a great thing, right? There is a need for it. We're here to help you. We're here to support you in what you need. That has been key as well, right? I think I was telling you a little bit before in our pre-session that I look a lot at what AWTC does, right? The Association Women Technology Champions. They're a little older than us, but essentially, right, there was a need that they found. They're volunteer, run. They had a passion themselves, right? And so I'm lucky to work with one of the founders, which is Gretchen Steenstra, and she is always willing to be an ear there to say, this is what's happening, the situation is happening. Like, did you all, experience this, and just hear her opinion or her way of thinking on what they may have experienced at AWTC. So it's also finding that, those allies and those people you can learn from around you, so that your growth, is strategic, but also that you feel that you're going down that right path and the right track for that.
Yeah. What I heard you say was in the beginning, right? The Fab Five that started this thing. It was really important that you listen to each other. You didn't say that everybody had the same opinion or everybody had the same perspective, but that everybody was heard. And that's a difficult thing to translate, right? And as an organization grows, if you have a leadership or a board, are there things that you've learned on how you all communicate that you think have done really well specifically in that? Because when in 5 years, when you all are 10 times the size, how will you maintain that? Is that something you all think about?
Yeah, well, I think we think about it, but I think it's just been so organic that we haven't actually pinpointed it down, right? Some of us are more risk averse than others, and others are very much less risk averse. Sure. And so it's kind of like, hey,
yeah, here's an idea.
Yeah, like we may be talking about it and like, let's bring it to the board. Let's talk about it. I don't know if there's something that we pinpoint to, but I know that when we did the volunteer, we started our volunteers and we had like volunteer orientation 101, in January, that one of the things we talked about is that community that we have within each other, the five of us, and how we wanted that community to transcend into the volunteer committees themselves, right? And we talked about respecting each other, right? And keeping that community, because as you grow, that gets a little bit more difficult. So I think as we bring in volunteers, we just try to tell them, like, culturally where we're going, we're all passionate about the same thing. At the end of the day, our end goal is to elevate Latino leaders in associations, right? And so we have to just continuously work towards that goal while respecting each other's opinions.
Yeah. And that is a major topic, I think, in today's society in general, is how much culture matters. And not culture in the sense of the Latino culture, but culture in the sense of the leadership culture has got to transcend. So I think that's something I think you can point to, the fact that you're having that conversation, or that the group recognizes that this is a community feel and energy that we want to stand on, right? Together. This is what we are about. And this, through this lens, is how we will scale. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think that's fair to say.
Is there something, I won't say that you did wrong. That's not fair. Is there anything that you've done that you would have done differently? I think it's important to learn from our experiences. Was there anything you could point to in this short history and go, maybe I would have done that a little differently?
I don't know that I can. I'm not saying that it's been all perfect, but I mean, would we want to have done more? Yes. Can we have done more? Probably.
Well, that's honest. And maybe the answer is you just need more time.
I'm sorry.
No, I was saying maybe the answer is simply you need more time to elapse to give yourself a bigger snapshot of history, because the impact of the decisions, while all looks, good and rainbows in the short term, the longer out you shoot, the change in direction that you made early on becomes more significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you're right in that regard, that we would have to just wait a little bit longer and see. I know that it was a little bit of a change, like once we became an official nonprofit, to make sure that that community aspect and the way that we were with each other, that we continue to be that way, even though we were an official nonprofit. And so, maybe we, have more time to establish processes, to have all that in place would have been good.
I'll ask you kind of a fun question. If suddenly, resources, I'll say financial resources, dropped out of the sky, have you thought about, as an organization, what you all would do with them to continue your mission and your growth?
We would definitely have more programming, I think, right? We would have more programming for our community, because I think we have some. I think we could do a lot more if we had more financial resources, and financial and people resources to do them, to fit the needs, to help with their careers. I know a couple of us on the board also feel this way, is that it'd be great to start partnering with colleges and like talking about association as a profession for college students, because like you said, we all stumble into it, not knowing that there are aspects and things that you may be studying that you can actually go and transfer into the association world. So then I think we would want to do that as well, and then have more probably networking and in-person events. I think that there's a high need, and people are really responding to in-person events now, right?
Yeah.
Because we had that gap of a couple of years when that wasn't happening, and so I think people are finding that being in person really does help, and they enjoy that. So
yeah, I don't think the desire ever left us. It was just the availability of opportunities that left us for a period. And now,
but when it came back, you're like, yes, I want to be there, right? I want to be there.
It flooded back, right? In my opinion, in observation, there were several associations that I work with that had record-breaking attendance at event because it was all just pent up. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get back in.
Yeah. And I think at ASAE annual, I think they said that they had higher than expected people attend as well, just at this past ASAE annual, which would have been the second one since COVID.
And not to like poke anybody on this, but I would say despite being in Atlanta where it's hot and it's summertime, so despite that, we still had a lot of people show up. That was a great event.
Yeah, there was a lot of people.
If I could just put a plug, I didn't tell you I would do this. If I could put a plug in for Association Latinos and people wanted to support, how would they reach you?
Yeah, so we have a website, associationlatinos.org. You can find more information there. There should be a link there to donate if you want to do a donation, or we're always looking for sponsors as well. So if you want to sponsor, there's a page there as well. And you can find us on our LinkedIn community, which is like our bigger community that you could say between Facebook and LinkedIn. And that's also with Association Latinos. Or you can email us at contact@associationlatinos.org.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that, Norma. And I'm just fascinated by the story and you all and the passion from the people that I've heard of in your roles is palpable. I mean, you can just hear it in your voice and your expressions. And I think that's how great associations are formed. Regardless of what industry they're in or who they serve, it's passionate people at the top like yourself that make it happen. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think I always say, I think I've started kind of saying, that like my makeup of like what makes me kind of happy is like, the balance of like family, work, and volunteering, right? Like volunteering is very important to me, just as important as work. I won't say it just as important as family, right? My family. But, I need in me so that I could be happy with who I am and what I'm doing. I always have to be doing some type of volunteering. And when we found this need, I mean, that's pretty much where I, kind of poured my extra time into. And I think I could say that for the other 5 co-founders and now like our volunteers as well.
Yeah, family first, but a very close second, and finding a personal passion in life and things that you're happy to support with your time and resources is, I think also, I would echo that, just a key factor of happiness, if that's right, in life, fulfillment, happiness, all of that. So.
Right. Yep, that's definitely me.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Norma. I mean, I hate to be the one that always have to wrap these up and cut them short. And I'm glad that we got a chance to talk about Association Latinos and your passion and introduce people to you personally and DelCor, all of that. As we often do at the end of the show, we ask folks, is there somebody else in your network that you think would be helpful for our audience to hear from?
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that you speak with Michael Pereira, who is actually one of our inaugural award winners. He's the winner of the Inspira Award, but he's also actually been the chair of the committee that I've been chairing, which is the communications committee. And I've really been able to see firsthand. I've never worked with him, and it was my first time really meeting him, but I've really gotten to see firsthand what such strong work ethic and what a great person he is to work with. And he's such an interesting person in general, which I was very excited that he actually won the award. So that's amazing. It's just the cherry on top.
Well, thank you for the referral, if we want to call it that. I look forward to speaking with him in the future. And thank you again, Norma, for your time. I appreciate you sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.